one second, there's so much to explain. All right, what's happening everyone? It's Adam and welcome back. I had to take a sip of coffee because there's so much to explain in this review. But in today's review, I'm reviewing the new iPad mini. Now, one big question I had to ask myself is who is this really for? Professionals or creatives? And I for sure am going to elaborate on that because I consider myself a professional. What I mean by that is I am a real estate investor and I use a lot of data. I do a lot of data entry. I use a lot of Excel, copying and pasting, dealing with purchase and sales agreements, signatures. All that stuff is so much easier if you have a keyboard and a mouse to copy and paste things. And I multitask like crazy. And anybody that uses the laptop knows if you multitask like crazy, you have to have a mouse. Otherwise, you just can't operate the same. You can't copy and paste and click on tabs and stuff like that as quick as you can without a mouse. So, and then, like I said, using a soft phone and using a headset, doing all that stuff is so much better for professional use. If you're an accountant, if you do bookkeeping, you scan a lot of documents, it's just way easier. Instead of using the camera, you may as well go all out and just get an actual scanner and have it uploaded to your computer so you can name those files a lot quicker. That's what I mean. There's way more steps involved with all that kind of boring professional work if you're using an iPad mini. And so obviously it leads us into this being best used for creatives. Now I'm left-handed, so the way I grabbed that was probably weird, but that's besides the point. Let's take Photoshop for example. I know people who edit photos on Photoshop all the time, and they literally put their iPad on like a little A-frame on their desk, or even a big one where they just set it there and edit their photos and even paint and draw with it with an Apple Pencil like this is a canvas. Whether you're editing photos or actually painting and drawing things with all kinds of different apps you can do that with, like it's a real canvas. So that's one way, because with an Apple Pencil, you just get way more precision edits and cutouts and shading, all that stuff, way better than you can with a mouse or a keyboard. And people I know who edit a lot of photos say their biggest problem with using a mouse or even using the trackpad on their laptop is it's almost too sensitive. You always get a little too shaky compared to holding still and putting your palm on it and really just being able to do that precision editing. And there's also the example of music production and people who do DJing even, where they use this as a turntable. But one good example of somebody that uses their iPad for music production is Henny the Business. I love his channel, and to see all he can do with music production with an iPad is really impressive. Again, it goes back to that artistic creativity of being able to fine tune or do things with a touch interface that MacBooks don't have. And for sure, you shouldn't be editing and producing beats with an iPhone. I mean, I know there's apps, and I mean, if you take, what is it? Fruity Loops or whatever, and all these music production apps, Ableton and all this and that, they have apps for your phone and for your computer and your iPad. But when you see him produce music with an iPad, you're like, okay, it just makes so much sense to use an iPad for that as opposed to a laptop. At least in my opinion, and obviously his too. Another way a lot of people bring up using an iPad is pilots. Now, I know chief flight instructors or CFIs, and I also know people who are retired 30 plus years from being a pilot, and they say the reason why they love it is for their flight maps and really just having a better visual of where they're going and what they're doing with their controls than if it was like a Tesla and they had a big old screen in the cockpit sitting right there. In addition to everything else they have to worry about, it's better to use this for certain things like that. That's convenient to pull out when you need it and put it away when you don't. So it's not an overall distraction sitting in front of your face. Because this feels like a book, like a really big book, you can palm this, or at least most of us can. It's just much more enjoyable reading books on this iPad than my iPhone. Now, I read paperback and hardcover, but that's another thing I wanted to bring up in my actual using of this iPad mini. Alright, now let's get into the design of the iPad mini. So I thought it was questionable at first with the fingerprint scanner being on the top right, only because I'm left-handed. But if you flip it upside down and you register your left thumb, now you can actually use it a little bit easier than if you're right-handed. Yeah, the Apple Pencil on the left side now magnetically, and then you just use your thumb to unlock it. So I think if you're a lefty like me, you shouldn't have any complaints with that like I thought I was going to have. But another thing I noticed is with the borders, a lot of people, I've heard some people say, not a lot of people, say they wish the borders were thinner. But here's the thing, you're holding this in your hand. So I actually appreciate that the borders are a little thick because it avoids accidental touches. Now, the speakers are probably my favorite part I don't care about the USB-C port. It is what it is. I don't romanticize about it. I just care about if it works and if I'm actually going to use it for its functionality. Other than that, it could have been Lightning too. I would have been just fine. But I am so glad they added the 4 speakers, not just because it gets louder and you have that dynamic stereo sound, but because Apple really did a great job, and you'll even hear about this in my iPhone 13 Pro review, is the sound quality is so rich, especially at a loud volume, where even with my iPhone 12, it kind of got high pitched and a little bit piercing if I had it full blasted, even with listening, and not just music, listening with audiobooks or to audiobooks and on YouTube videos, people's voices kind of hurt my ears at a loud volume. They did way better with these new products, and I really love the iPad mini sound quality. It's probably my favorite part of consuming content with this thing. And if it wasn't obvious enough, I did get the Starlight color, which is kind of an off silver, is the best way I can put it when you see it in person, as opposed to like an off white. Think of it that way, and the Starlight color will kind of make sense to how it looks in person. And one more thing about being left-handed though, and I was thinking about the volume buttons, and I use this in landscape mode majority of the time, not all the time, but I don't know, 70%. And the volume buttons are perfect if you're left-handed because they're on the bottom left right here. So that sounded really funny, but think about it. I was at first thinking this is only for right, it's going to be more friendly for right-handed people. But no, it's actually maybe even more friendly for left-handed people. With the display of this, I will say it's 60 hertz, same pixel density as last year. You can go on YouTube and adjust the video settings to 4K, let's say, but it's still going to look a little pixelated, not literally 4K. That's just not the resolution of this screen. But it's definitely a lot better than their most standard iPad, especially when I was comparing the two in the store and just seeing the difference in resolution quality. I would say it's good enough for everyday consumers, but it's not going to be enough for tech nerds because tech nerds are like, I need 120 hertz and blah, blah, blah. But even if you try watching a 4K video on this, you're going to notice a difference from it being 1080, but it's not going to give you the full resolution, at least as accurate as it should. So for me, it's good enough. I don't mind the 60 hertz, and with moving around and multitasking, there's no promotion on this or anything. It would have been cool if they did that, but I think that would have hurt the battery life. So when we talk about the battery life, I think they're claiming about 9 hours of usage, with watching content continuously. I got probably 7 to 8, but that's usually because I had pretty high brightness and I used the True Tone a lot. And I use the speakers at a high volume a lot because I usually set this down while I'm cooking, or in my review of using this, that's what I was doing. I usually had it on the table while a YouTube video was playing in the background. And so the screen was still on during that whole time. I think the only thing I had an issue with the display is there's 500 nits of peak brightness. So using it outside in full sun, especially if you have sunglasses on, it's going to be a darker screen for sure than even an iPhone 13 Pro. But it wasn't so bad to where you can't use it outside. It's just, kind of be cautious of that if you're at a coffee shop and the sun's over your shoulder hitting the screen. You might want to sit a little bit differently to actually see it in its full brightness. Now, it does have Wi-Fi 6 and 5G, but no millimeter wave, I guess. So it's not going to be the fastest hotspot. If you try connecting to a hotspot, it's not going to be anything most people care about for the time being. I think it's going to take a little bit more time before we can get the full usage of 5G, but for now, it's just going to be like normal cell data in my opinion. Now, this is the Wi-Fi version, so even with connecting to the internet at the coffee shop or wherever I was, especially at home, I didn't notice any issues. Now let's get into the photo and video quality. Right now I'm going to be showing video samples and photo samples as I'm talking over them. But it's good enough to where I'm like, okay, this is much better than other versions of the iPads. It's definitely going to be way better than the most basic iPad you can get that was just released. But I'm not expecting people to use the cameras for, quick photos, or really, I don't really expect anybody to go out taking photos with this thing, in other words. With the iPad OS, I can say a lot about that alone, but I'd probably have to make an entirely new video to really cover the use of that and what I really think about iPad OS in general. But I do know it's the same software experience over every device, just kind of like all the new iPhones had the same iOS software as long as you update it to iOS 15 or now iOS 15.01 or something like that. But either way, it's the same experience that you're going to get in utility, but it's going to just be different when it comes to the refresh rate, if you have ProMotion, or really the screen resolution, things like that would be the different thing, but it's still the same slide over windows, multitasking, split screen, the app library, etc. that you all get with an iPad mini that you can get on the iPad Pros. So for me, I think, it's cool that you can swipe from the bottom right corner with the Apple Pencil to take a quick note, or from the bottom left corner to take a quick snapshot and then edit it. So I think Apple's biggest issue with iPads is just iPad OS in general. I think if it was more like a MacBook that was a touch interface, basically a MacBook with a touchscreen, it would be a way better experience in utility and functionality. But I think they're scary that if they did that, people would not want MacBooks. But a MacBook comes with a keyboard. So it just, again, it goes back to utility, because it's not even speed that's an issue with this. The last 3 shorts, or last 2 YouTube short videos I did with the iPhone tips, were edited on this. And yeah, they're short videos, but I still recorded using my Sony a7C, and it uploaded really quickly, it downloaded really quickly, everything was just fine. I mean, I can't expect it to be a big difference if I was uploading, unless I was uploading like a major 4K, 8K video or something. But I don't think people who get an iPad mini are going to be doing that. So overall, with the price starting out at 64 gigs of storage at $499 and 256 gigs of storage at $649, I think this is namely for, again, creatives, artistic people, those who are going to be students and they want to mainly use this for note taking and maybe recording the audio in notes of the class, because you can do that in notes, stuff like that. It's just a good in-between device. But I would not recommend it for professionals if you're going to be using a lot of phone calls, doing a lot of data entry, stuff like that, where it's very multitask, labor intensive. It's one task at a time kind of thing. So anyhow, I will probably do another video on iPad OS in general, my thoughts on that. But yeah, it's not for me, honestly. I just do too much work to where I'm like, I keep gravitating towards my MacBook Air M1 instead of this since I've had it. I hope this review helped. Thank you for watching. And okay, I just accessed Siri, but I'm going to keep that in because that was kind of funny. Anyhow, I hope this review helped. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see y'all on the next one.